All right, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Access Skills Shop as it pertains to planning and organizing events. My name is DeMeSHee, and I am the Community Impact Coordinator for Tacoma Venues and Events, and I will be your host today. Before we jump into today's skill shop and interactive poll, I would like to quickly cover a few housekeeping rules to ensure we have a smooth and engaging skill shop. This skill shop will be recorded. All attendees will be muted. Additional resources will be posted on our Tacoma Venues and Events website after the presentation, and everyone will have the opportunity to provide feedback and suggestions for future skill shops and an after event survey. During the skill shop, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A feature. We will have time for Q&A at the end. All right, let's get started with a quick poll question. Which of these fictional characters would make the best DEIA officer? We have Yoda. Oh, everybody's doing it already. Leslie Knope, T'Challa, Lisa Simpson. Oh, look at this. Ooh. I think we're ready. Uh-oh, still changing. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I think we've got our answer. It's Yoda for the win. T'Challa came in a close second, my friends. So thank you so much for humoring me with that and getting the morning started with some great energy and insight. Um, Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to vote, but my vote would have been Yoda. Let's be real. Okay, so like I said in the beginning, my name is DeMeSHee. Let's get that. And I am the Community Impact Coordinator for Tacoma Venues and Events. I lead the community engagement program and help create partnerships with nonprofits, local schools, districts, colleges, universities, neighborhood association, tribal members, and civic members and leaders. I also support community engagement at the City of Tacoma produced events such as the annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration and the City of Destiny Awards. Tacoma Venues and Events manages the City of Tacoma venues, which include Tacoma Dome, Greater Tacoma Convention Center, Cheney Stadium, historic theaters like the Pantages and Rialto Theaters, and Theater on the Square. TVE also includes the City of Tacoma Special Events Office. This department manages all special event and film permits. It also oversees the City Events and Recognition Committee, also known as CERC. This City Council appointed committee consists of 11 City of Tacoma residents and representation from the 5 City Council districts from varied backgrounds and areas of expertise. In 2024, they voted to approve $90,000 of special event funding for 39 organizations to produce equitable events throughout Tacoma. Joining us today, we are fortunate to have a remarkable group of people. Ashley, have we heard from council member?
No, we have not.
Not yet. Okay.
She's
She's
on
here.
the panels list now.
Great, wonderful. Well,
I'm
joining us
real.
today, joining us today, we are fortunate to have Council Member Diaz, who will share insights on policy and equity initiatives. In addition, we have Ashley Young, Special Events Coordinator with Tacoma Venues and Events. She will be leading the roundtable discussion. Our panelists include Angel Pele, Principal Equity Consultant, City Manager Office, Office of Equity and Human Rights; Athena Hitson, co-owner of Assemble Strategic Partners; Tony Hester, Chair of Tacoma Area Commission on Disability, also known as TACIT; Maria Teresa Gomez, Language Access Coordinator, City Manager Office, Office of Equity and Human Rights. With such a knowledgeable group here today, I'm excited to see where our discussion will lead. And I would like to introduce Council Member Diaz. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate the invite.
Yes, of course. Well, we will have you jump right in to talk about our DEIA and the initiative.
Excellent. So, as mentioned, my name's Olgy Diaz. I am one of our at-large council members here for the city of Tacoma. I live over in the Tacoma Mall neighborhood, in case anyone is my neighbor. I am really excited about the work that y'all are doing here to really realize this vision that I passed in resolution 21 or 41278. That resolution was to ask that the city manager, which goes through all of our staff here before you, to create an equity toolkit for folks trying to put on events. I felt like it was really important that as our community is getting more funding, more opportunities, more just more revitalization after such a long pandemic, being stuck in the house or stuck on the front lines as essential workers, that I thought it was important that we sort of reevaluate how we're doing events, make sure that they are as equitable, as accessible as they can be. The city's been doing a lot of work around racial equity and reducing barriers through our other resolution on anti-racism. But this is, I think, in my mind, sort of the next level of that in terms of giving the tools that we're doing inside the city to community partners to help make sure that we're being inclusive in our events that we're funding and that we're supporting. A big part of why that matters to me is as the city's first Latina on the council, it's been really important to me to try to make sure that we're thinking about how people's background impacts what not just they want to go to, but how their experience goes there. And also the people who are producing events, I think, are coming from a lot more backgrounds. So we all have different kinds of blind spots depending on what kind of home we grew up in or what kind of communities that we were raised in. And so I think it's really helpful to have a toolkit that folks can sort of check through and see what they're missing and really work to implement events that are going to reach out to so many more in our community and make everyone feel more welcome and more engaged. I think that's how we all get a little bit safer. And I think that's how we get a little bit more active in our own communities, is just by being open and interested in seeing other folks for who they are and what they're bringing. So just a little bit of how we got here in my mind, and I'm really excited to see how y'all are realizing the work and hope that it helps in community.
Thank you so much for your vision. This project has given me, and I'm sure some of my colleagues, some insight as to the things that we should be mindful of and aware of for our community members and organizers. And so it has been a lot of hard work, but very intentional work, which I think we're all very proud of. So thank you so much for joining us today. And like I said, for your vision as well.
Much appreciation to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. And council member, you are more than welcome to stay. We know you have a busy schedule, or you can leave at any time. All right. All right. Next, we have Angel Pele, and I will let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks so much, DeMeSHee. Hi, everyone. My name is Angel Pele, she, her pronouns. For those that may be visually impaired, my makeup consists of beautiful brown skin, blonde hair. I have glasses on, and I have a gray crew neck on. So yeah, I am the equity. I am here on behalf of our office, the Office of Equity and Human Rights, that exists under the city manager's office. And I am the principal equity consultant, or in other words, known as the equity manager, overseeing our division, which consists of 5 equity programs consultants, 2 of which I am joined here today, Annalicia Matthews, as well as our senior program consultant, Lucas Moraldo. And we have had the privilege and the honor to partner with Tacoma Venues and Events, DeMeSHee and Ashley, the past couple of months to develop this equity and events toolkit. And so what is DEIA? Diversity, equity, inclusion, access, which all trickles into belonging. We here at the city are committed to ensuring that Tacoma is a city where everyone feels as though they belong from wherever they're at, whether they're at the east side, northeast Tacoma, south of Tacoma. We are committed to just ensuring that our city is committed to dismantling barriers, inequities, and building bridges and building relationships. And dismantling, white supremacy, capitalistic oppressive systems, and everything that we do, starting with an example like this, challenging the status quo and creating a toolkit that is real, tangible, that demonstrates how we, from wherever we are, equity is in fact embedded in all that we do. And so diversity, that is, refers to the presence of the differences within any given setting. Equity, ensuring that we as a society, we're continuing to evolve from equality, which equality is us giving all of the resources to everybody, but equity is more specific, more intentional into where we are giving the resources according to the individual's needs. Access, that refers to how we here are making our programs accessible to everyone, whether they're a part of a historically marginalized, disproportionately impacted community. Everybody has access to use and can benefit from the programs, opportunities, services that we're providing. Inclusion and belonging. We kind of already touched on that. But so that's what we're here to do. We've had the privilege to collaborate with TVE for the past couple of months to really develop the toolkit to help ensure that we're being intentional in everything that we do, from the conversations, stakeholdering, to the day, all the way up to the day of the event and then after. Why is it important? Well, it's been proven just everywhere that diversity, equity, and inclusion benefits organizations because it drives that innovation, that creativity, better decision making, and makes us better in everything that we do. And also, we lead with anti-racism because we lead with ensuring that we're dismantling those barriers and challenging those inequities, of which I've already kind of mentioned. But also we lead with equity because people matter in everything that we do. And so if we are ensuring, think of diversity, equity, inclusion, and access no different than continuous improvement, no different than lean methodologies. It's important. It's an intersection of all. I am a firm believer that advancing equity requires an intersectionality of all different skill sets. And so did I miss anything, Lucas? I'm going to go ahead and invite my partner to the stage because, in full transparency, I am still new to the city. So I just want to make sure that Lucas has an opportunity. Did I miss anything on behalf of our office, Lucas?
No, I think you did a fabulous job of describing the full scope of the work that we're doing, and our hopes that that ethic and belief system will be absorbed by all the wonderful presenters or potential presenters here as we create belonging across the city and beyond.
Awesome. Well, perfect. So the toolkit is it's a comprehensive document. If you are from the look at, if you've taken a look at it already and you felt overwhelmed by the information, understand that's totally fine. If you need any assistance navigating the document, we are here for you, but it's a very comprehensive document because we were intentional in ensuring everybody understands the different domains and the pillars that come with anti-racism and that DEIA lens. And so what does it look like to apply the DEIA lens and belonging in the various steps to prepare for hosting an event, or even in the design, the conceptual phase? And so as you navigate it, you'll see that it really relies on data. It's data driven, so it'll require that you think back to just capitalizing on the feedback that you received previously. And so how have you relationally partnered with the community in the past to gauge their feedback? What programs did we not offer? So as you navigate through the toolkit, it breaks it down into the different domains, the different pillars of equity. There is also a very important piece of it, which includes language access. Maria Gomez, who's also a part of our team, has been a fabulous partner in this work and ensuring that there is a component of language access added into the document. But it really helps, I think, all together at the end. It'll help you as an event organizer, designer, whatever role that you're in. It'll help you build your equity case to ensure that the event that you're putting on or you're facilitating or hosting really capitalizes on every aspect of equity and anti-racism. And so hopefully that is enough. DeMeSHee, Ashley, I'll pass it back over to you, but that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Angel. Yes, we do plan on touching on the toolkit, and it is quite a dynamic document. So we're just going to give a brief overview today. But like I mentioned in the beginning, it will be available to you after the SkillShop, and we have our roundtable discussion coming up as well. So we are going to go ahead and make sure you all are still awake out there by going to another poll question. All right, on a scale from 1 to 5, how comfortable are you with discussing DEIA practices in your organization? 1 being not comfortable, 5 being very comfortable. Okay. Wow. Okay. It actually is very comfortable, is in the lead, but somewhere in between 3 and 4. We're very equal, but being very comfortable, which is great to see. And it's great to see that you guys are being honest and transparent about where you are in the process. So that is greatly appreciated. As Angel had mentioned, the Equity and Events Toolkit that our offices have been working on over the past few months. So we're really excited to be able to provide this resource to you. The intention behind this SkillShop series is to engage and uplift community event planners while providing resources and reduce barriers. So as the community impact coordinator, this work is extremely important in order to strengthen event equity and access. So the goal of the Equity and Events Toolkit is to equip organizers with tools and guidance to plan events intentionally with resources for diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, DEIA, ensuring that Tacoma's cultural richness and diversity are celebrated and events are accessible to all residents. These resources Also prepare event organizers to apply for special event funding overseen by the City Events Recognition Committee, which I mentioned earlier, and to understand the measurement metrics used to determine funding and to encourage increased equity at events. We have mentioned the 7 steps for developing an equity plan for your event. In the document, you will see this, and it is broken down: critical mindset, recommended tasks, and additional resources and support in order to complete these tasks. Step 1, it's set event goals and objectives. This is a part of the critical mindset. What you want to be thinking of: does your organization and planning committee represent the community in which you are planning an event for? You want to establish a committee where people, the attendees, can see themselves being a part of. This group should include diverse representation from your volunteers, board members, and staff. Step 2, pre-planning, pre-event planning. Pre-event planning with DEIA and all aspects of projects are designed with diverse perspectives in mind from start to finish. So something to consider here: are you considering days of the week, holidays? How do those things impact your target audience? The food that you're going to be providing, were you thoughtful? Will it make your audience feel welcome and safe at the event? Recommended task would be to avoid religious cultural days. Make sure to include questions about dietary needs, accessibility needs. These are things that if you're able to do a pre-event survey, that would be great. But this also goes back to your DEIA committee. Who's on that committee that could speak to some of those needs that the audience will have? We have step 3, mindful marketing and outreach. I know as an event planner, sometimes we're just hitting the ground running and we think we know, and then we have to stop. We have this moment. But sometimes our marketing has already gone out and we have not thought about the accessibility for everyone. So you want to have opportunities available to all of your audience members to ensure maximum visibility and engagement. Does the outreach include marketing materials in multiple languages or the use of universal design practices? You want to make sure event promotion and invitations are being distributed inclusively, and also that those marketing materials and visuals are reaching out to your target audience. Language access. I can't wait for us to hear from Maria Gomez. She's truly been an asset to our team in creating this document. But conducting language equity needs assessments is the first step. And I will let her talk a little bit more about that as we go through. Analyzing feedback is always important. You want to use data and feedback from previous events and collect information through surveys and focus groups from key audience members. Always consider how you plan on using this data to advance your future planning efforts. So we always want to be moving forward, making sure that things that happened at a previous event, we're not continuing to do the same thing over and over again. We also want to create an equity plan. You want to take all of your information and craft a powerful equity plan that directly outlines your action items to ensure a diverse, equitable, inclusive event. Paint a picture of how the event builds, supports, and maintains equity by addressing major disparities. Step 7, explore City of Tacoma special events funding. Ashley will be talking more about this coming up here shortly, but the special event funding program is intended to foster high quality, equitable, inclusive, open to the public, free events across Tacoma. The program is overseen by the City Events and Recognitions Committee. Now, I know as event planners that are attending this SkillShop today, we all like a good checklist. We like to see those boxes. We like to have them as a part of our planning process, so we know that we are completing the steps. And so also a part of this resource, we will have an equity in-event checklist that you will be able to print out and have. And these are some of these sections that you will see: organizational planning, staff, volunteer, and vendor coordination, date and venue location, mindful marketing, language access, catering, transportation and parking, diverse vendors and suppliers, equipment and rental, signage, wayfinding, registration, ticketing, and check-in, and of course, feedback. So this particular checklist, there will be multiple items under each of these tasks that you will be able to dive deeper into and make sure that you are hitting all of those points so that your event covers the DEIA initiative. Before we jump into the DEI roundtable, I set some guidelines for inclusive conversation. Sometimes DEIA can be uncomfortable, whether you're talking about DEIA in the workplace or for us today in events. So some guidelines that I have provided: be present, assume positive intent, speak from the I perspective, acknowledge mistakes, avoid assumptions, respect differences, and stay open to feedback. So our panelists will be answering some questions, and then at the end, we'll have Q&A. And during that Q&A time, please apply these guidelines, and it's okay if you don't know. The point of being here today is to know and to do better. So now I'd like to kick it over to Miss Ashley Young.
Thank you so much, DeMeSHee. Hi, everybody. I'm Ashley Young. I'm the Special Events Coordinator for Tacoma Venues and Events, which is a department of the City of Tacoma. I'm honored to be leading this discussion today. This has been a moment in the making for almost a year, and we're so happy to be hosting this roundtable on what we think is such an important topic. As my colleague said, again, Ashley Young, I'm so fortunate to be a part of supporting special events in our community in a couple of ways. Many of you know me here as the permit lady. I help facilitate any events that take place in our public right-of-way, such as festivals, parades, block parties, neighborhood block parties, and more. I'm also the department's liaison for the City Events and Recognitions Committee, or as we call it around here, CERC. This committee produces two of its own events every year and distributes special event funding for events in our community. This funding is for free and open to the public events, and they measure all of their scoring criteria based on equity, community impact, capacity to present, and programming merit. So you can see why this is such an important topic for me and why I'm so excited to be providing our community and our event organizers with the tools to further pursue this funding to benefit their events. I'll do another quick round of introductions again. We have with us here Athena Hitson with Assemble Strategic. She's the event organizer for the Tacoma Pride Festival, amongst other many wonderful events in our region. We also have Tony Hester, who's the chair of the Tacoma Area Commission on Disabilities. We also have Maria Teresa Gomez, who's our language access coordinator and the Office of Equity and Human Rights in Tacoma. And then we also have Angel Pele here again with us, who will just be here with me during this conversation. So here's what we'll do today. We're going to talk about what is seemingly a challenging topic to many folks: diversity, equity, inclusion, access, and then we're also going to touch on belonging. But what we're really going to do is we're going to try to put ourselves in the shoes of others with an open mind and heart. We're going to learn from each other and do our best to leave this space with some great takeaways. But ultimately, we're going to try to have a good time. So, DeMeSHee, you could pull up the presentation so we can see all of our panelists on the screen. I think it'll be great for us to all just be seen here. Stop share. Okay, great. Well, panelists, one other good thing I want to say is, for the attendees, we know we can't see or hear you, unfortunately, but we do want to hear from you. So please use the Q&A feature to ask our panelists questions. Feel free to direct them at specific individuals, or I can help guide who they go to if you don't quite know who to send it to. Our Mandro will be watching out for any questions, and we'll take some time in just a moment to go over them. We do have a poll question or two to kind of break things up so we can also learn more about you. So help me guide this discussion. We have set questions, but really a big part of this process that our team has decided to be very intentional on was hearing from the community, and not just this being information that was coming directly from us. So help us do that here today as well, and we'll get started. So thank you, my panel members, for being here. I really appreciate you all. I feel like every time I have these connections with either you as groups or individuals, I always get to learn so much. And so we're just so glad you're here today. And I'm just going to get started. First question. I'm not even going to massage it. We're just going to dive in. We all want to be here for the same reason, right? So I'm going to go to Athena first. Athena, from an organizational level, how do you ensure inclusive leadership, and how do you involve your community stakeholders and representatives, particularly those from a marginalized group, in your planning process to ensure their voices are heard?
Hi, I'm Athena Hitson, and I've been doing events for 15 years, and definitely out of COVID, this DEI became very, very important to me and my business partner. And the question's really big, right? That feels like a big question, but it really does come down to the simplicity of engaging in conversation in the public that you are serving. I am a white female, I'm very aware, and I am serving publics that are very diverse and BIPOC and LGBTQ, and even though I identify as queer, I don't know everything about my public, right? And so it is really important to have committees within these publics that you would be serving, to have everybody's voice at the table before you start making plans. I think that voting on these committees, like who's going to be on the committee, is like the biggest conversation that I have before we go into these things. So I am not making these decisions as the event person. It's coming from the public that I would serve. So if anybody comes to me wanting to talk about how do you address like what you're supposed to do, and I think that it's about making sure that you aren't making the decisions. It's coming from a group of people from the public you serve, like with Tacoma Pride. I mean, it's come, I think back about 10 years ago and now, and the way that we operate it took a lot of time and patience to get there, and to get everybody on board as well. And so, you know, I don't see myself as an expert. I do know that I'm seen as a leader, because I want to make sure that everybody is involved. And so by the intentions of how I interact with my clients, in the community, I always make sure that I'm asking as many questions as I can and not assuming that I know everything. I think that's where good leadership comes from, is making sure that you are leading from a broad scope and involving everybody's ideas and voices.
It's fantastic. And you do the not feeling like an expert, but understanding that you're a leader, like that's such a huge distinction for us to continue to grow and involve people. And what I really love that you said is that you ask a lot of questions. So I'm going to ask Tony then. So Mr. Hester, what measures or questions should our event organizers be asking or taking into consideration to ensure that their event or venue or their footprint is fully accessible to those with physical disabilities and sensory needs, or those who may be deaf or hard of hearing?
Well, I think the first thing you need to do, as the previous panelist said, is actually talk to those people. The only way you can understand what's going on is if you talk to those people and ask the specific questions. What is it that we can do to make your experience better? What kind of assistive technology would you need? What kind of spacing would you need? Or where do you need to enter? And make those things available. I think just asking what would you need is the main question. How can we accommodate you? How can we make your experience extraordinary or fulfilling? And again, asking about the tools, because you may not be able to get those tools quickly. So you need to know that at the beginning, as you're in the beginning stages of the planning process. And for me, the experience doesn't start when I'm at the event. It actually starts before the event. So a question that I think should also be asked is, how can we help you access the event promotional materials, whether it be via phone, electronically, or in hard copy? And I think you always want to have several ways of accessing the event. Some people may not be able to access it digitally. Some may not be able to access it by phone. Others may not be able to read the hard copies. So those are some of the questions that I think I would ask at the beginning. How can you access the event, and how can we make your experience fulfilling? What tools can we use to help you make your experience fulfilling? So I think if you start with those questions, I think you'll get a lot of information and work from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to take it over to Maria real quick, because you landed on a question that I had for her that speaks specifically about this. And I kind of want to tie it into what we've asked you, Tony, and elaborate from Maria. So Athena, you said you ask a lot of questions, and Tony kind of confirmed that, but what happens when you're asking questions to a population that they don't speak the same language as you? So I'm going to ask Maria, like, what kind of specific technologies or tools do you use to facilitate language translation so that they're reaching multiple populations regardless of the language that they may speak to get this information?
Thank you, Ashley. Good morning, everyone. Maria Teresa Games, Language Access Coordinator for the City of Tacoma. Thank you for the question and for having me here today. Well, first of all, my approach is to eliminate assumptions. Because when we talk about language, we are not talking about translation and interpretation. We are talking about meaningful access, which is actually a guideline from the federal government after the Title VI of the federal law was reevaluated in year 2000 by former President Clinton. So what is meaningful access? How I can provide that and eliminate assumptions, because people not only speak other languages, but people belong to other cultures. And also people come with history and with background. So, for example, I cannot assume that because I'm going to be throwing an event close to the Vietnamese community, if I translate everything into Vietnamese, I'm going to be fine. No, I need to know my community. I need to know that there are at least 5 Vietnamese dialects. I need to know what the dialect that my community speaks. And also, if I really want to be inclusive, I want to know, I want to invite, I want to be children, I want to see young people, I want to see elderly, I want to see all of them participating. So, for example, can they read? Their history prevent them from learning to read or write. So maybe translating everything and having flyers might not be the way to communicate with certain segment of that very same community. But when we have those signs at the entrance of the event in their language, even if they cannot read or write, that makes them feel welcome. That makes them feel like the event is for them, that there's information for them available. And I want to be precise about your questions, what tools I use. So first of all, I need to have a trusted provider, because especially if I'm going to be talking about vital information, I want to have a trusted provider that shares the liability with me. But also, I don't want to call it tool, because that is not a good word, but I have my community ambassador. I have a member of that community or more. That community ambassador definition is a leader in their own community, is a person that cares about their own community, is a trusted messenger, and also has an extensive network in their community where they belong. So I really believe in building relationships, and that doesn't happen overnight. So I have to build those relationships, invite my ambassadors to come, listen from them, let them educate me about the cultural aspects of their communities. Those ambassadors, most of the time, are appointed by their own communities. It's not that I go get and choose them. So they can help me to bridge the gap, but they also educate me and educate the staff about those cultural aspects that are important. And like, as you said from the very beginning, the food, the way we ask them, what do they want, the way, that is something that for me is important and goes beyond translation, and is about making them feel welcome and really trying to provide that meaningful access. So provider, trusted provider, and be close to your community, constant contact with your community. In my case, by ambassador.
Yeah, these are great, really great resources. There have been often times where from the permit or the funding side of things where I have somebody that has applied for the funding, and the person that I work with alongside them is a representative, a community ambassador, somebody who maybe understands technology a little bit better, or somebody who has the ability to speak both languages, and they are often there with them. And I welcome them into those scenarios, right? They might come out of left field sometimes. You might go all of a sudden, oh wait, who is this person talking to me? But when I sit down and understand the connection and the benefit to working with them alongside the person who is either receiving the permit or applying for the funding, I found that everybody's experiences tend to be a lot better. And just being inclusive, keeping everybody in that loop. Just because you're working with a community ambassador does not mean that you necessarily don't work with that applicant or that person anymore. It just means now you have a stronger connection with somebody that maybe they feel more comfortable with, or they feel like they trust. And that's really important.
Actually, you are on point. And also those interactions help you to be more and more prepared for future cases. We sometimes don't notice that, but we keep learning and learning, and we do it a little bit better next time. Incremental progress is progress nonetheless, right?
Yes.
So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we also have Angel here with us, and this might be a curveball for her, sorry, but also not sorry. But is there anything we're really talking about the before right now? And that's kind of how I guided the questions that I have, is the things we should be thinking about ahead of time. So did you have anything to contribute on how in the planning process, the pre-planning, that people should be thinking about moving forward with planning these events, given the DEIA elements that we're talking about?
Great question, Ashley. Thanks for tapping me in here. You know, everything the panelists have shared is what we should definitely consider. I think the underlying principle here is be proactive in your planning. Nothing about us without us, truly and intentionally. If you are living through that motto in everything that you're doing business-wise, then I feel like you're going to thrive and create an environment for everybody to thrive in, because that's what equity and inclusion is about. That's what diversity is about. That's what access is about. And so nothing more to add other than if you take a look at the comprehensive document, it's comprehensive for a reason, and that is because it does factor in intentionality. When you talk about organizations being transformative, that's the difference between organizations being transformative versus performative. You know, it's moving away from just checking the box. Yes, in this industry, we may be in whatever industry that we're in, we may be used to things a certain way. Well, that's the beauty of diversity and inclusion, is we get to be flexible. We get to pivot to being proactive, exploring things in a different manner. Here at the city, we have continuous improvement, where they love to say, be curious. That's another aspect of diversity and inclusion, is when you challenge the status quo, you are also being curious to doing things a different way, driving equitable outcomes that may be unorthodox, may be different than what you've consistently been doing for years. And so that's just what I would add. I think being proactive rather than reactive is certainly going to benefit organizations and planners and facilitators and hosts, whatever role that you have. But yeah, just be intentional with nothing about us without us. And that's a great start. So thanks, Ashley.
Yeah. No, thank you, Angel. Well, as promised, we were going to break things up a little bit. So we do have another poll question here. I believe DeMeSHee is going to share it on the screen, but Gerald's going to pop it up in the webinar for us. Okay. Question number 3. So what type of support would be most beneficial for enhancing DEIA in your events? We've got access to DEIA consultants, comprehensive training programs, networking with other inclusive event organizers, or toolkits and resources like what we'll be providing you later on today. And I see them rolling in. We've got 17 people responded. We've got pretty high on the networking right now. I think that is so incredibly important as well. I love connecting with other people in our industry to kind of learn about what's working for them. How is it working for them? It may not translate exactly the same for you. So be willing to adapt based off of your event. And every event can be totally different. You may plan 4 major events a year and none of them are structured the same at all. Or maybe they're not with the same people, or maybe your audience is totally different. But you can find basic foundational tools and use the information from other folks that's worked for them. Let's see, we've also got pretty high on toolkits and resources. That's super exciting. That means the work that we're doing over here is kind of exactly what you guys are looking for. And then access to DEIA consultants. You know, those are not always easy to come by, but there are some really good ones in our community. And I'm sure you could reach out to several of us here today and we can guide you toward a few of them. And then not so much the training programs, that kind of, that bottom up. Maybe it's because you're already here and you feel like this is a training program. So you know what, maybe we've already accomplished that goal today by being here together. So, well, thank you so very much for that full question. I'm going to bring it over to Gerald to see if we have anything in our Q&A and just see if anybody had questions that we can address here. And yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. We do have one question, and it's probably towards you. Is our organizations are able to apply multiple times a year for the funding from the city for qualifying events?
So the funding program is only once a year. Our goal is to roll it out in September for you to be able to find out end of the year if you've received funding. We only allow for an organization to apply for one of their events, but I'm talking specifically about special event funding. There are other funding opportunities out there that can be event directed, such as the Tacoma Creates funding, or the arts programming funding that they have. I even would venture to say, just depending on the nature of your event, if you have something a little bit more large scale and that has like significant focus on resources for communities, there's the neighborhood, oh my gosh, the neighborhood and community services funding that goes out every year. And then what we're trying to look towards is maybe that what funding is not provided by the city. Are there private organizations that have funding? Are there companies that have funding that you can go after? And my hope is that as we dive deeper into these questions and searching for the answers, that we can start providing those resources in the near future as well. Thank you so much for that question. I really appreciate it. Well, I'm going to dive back into asking questions to our panelists. So we kind of talked about the pre-planning. What are you supposed to think about, before your event? I have some more questions that are related to that as well. But I kind of want to start diving into the event itself. So first, I'm just going to go to Athena again. Hi, Athena. And I want to talk about participants, our panelists, moderators, our performers and speakers, our staff and volunteers. Can you provide some information on how you go about working with those people and to ensure that they have like a diverse range of backgrounds?
Yeah, it's again, like a lot of moving parts when you're talking about all of those types of individuals. I might approach volunteers differently than I would performers. I would also, again, I do rely heavily on committees, but I do have a little bit of a sixth sense when it comes to performers and to what is going to draw crowds. So I usually present a list of people to the committee or to the group that I'm working with and ask what their thoughts are about the list. And then we go from there and suggestions, right? And we talk about when you're putting an event together, you want people to come. So you want the most interesting, exclusive. You want, like when you're talking about music performers, what kind of draw do they have? What does their audience look like? Do they match the audience that we're wanting to come? Again, it comes back to asking questions and diving in. And I really like Angel talking about thoughtfulness and intentionality, because I think that when you start asking those questions and you dive in, then you have a lot of people answering where, it would just be me and my crew having our own ideas about how things are happening. But when you ask it, you might get answers that you never would have thought of. So it does come down to making sure you're having those conversations. And communication is key on that, how you ask those conversations and what are the driving factors of why you want them to for. And like when you want speakers, like why are they there? what is their background. And I mean, we're always asking ethnicity, gender, all of those things when I go out and I talk to getting these particular performers or speakers, because we want to know everybody's background and we want to know what kind of where they come from, because I think it's important to have a diversity of whoever you're asking in this when you're putting on an event. But with volunteers, I feel like when you get volunteers and you want to make sure that they're representing your population, then the people that you were serving, like if I'm talking to a BIPOC community, I'm going to have them put out the ask and talk about why we're trying to get volunteers. So I think it just comes down to conversations and making sure that you're including your client and the community involved in those.
Yeah, absolutely. And I set you up a little bit because originally those questions are all three separated, those
Right.
PE participants. But I did that because I knew that you would let us know that you communicate with all of them a little bit differently. And so let's maybe focus on one of those groups right now, or just that area of event planning, which is the participants and performers. You said you ask a lot of questions about their background. Can you tell us, like, what questions are you asking? How are you ensuring that it's balanced and inclusive representation? And then how are you communicating with those performers?
So performers versus speakers is a different scenario as well. Artists versus someone who speaks regularly about a subject. I'm going to approach them differently. But with a speaker, like to say that I need a diverse group of people, I'm going to ask at least 10 and see who's available. And then I'm going to ask, these are the kinds of things that we're speaking on. How do you feel that you can come to the table with these things? What is your background? What is your ethnicity? What is your, I mean, to me, one of the biggest things is making sure that the people that you're partnering with are also on the same wavelength. Like, I am an anti-racist ally, and I'm going to make sure the people I'm partnering with are the same, because that I am hired because I'm an ally. And so I want to make sure that the partners showing up are also going to be allies, and also can bring to the table to speak about the things that we're talking about. And so I usually ask questions directly. Is this a community that you support? How do you think you can support them through the things that you're talking about? So I usually have a questionnaire about 10, and a lot of, generally I'm talking to people who I know want to be there anyway, but I just make sure that we do our due diligence and being thoughtful about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So we have our speakers, we have our presenters, we have our entertainers. So let's take it over to Tony really quick, because we have all that stuff planned and now it's the day of, or it's even still pre-planning. What types of considerations should be made or provisions be made for the digital content or online registration, the event materials, virtual sessions, things on the stage that are being seen to the audience? What should we be thinking about so that we make sure that they're accessible to all participants?
This is Tony Hester again. The one thing, as far as when I think about digital content, the one thing is making sure, because I'm from a visually impaired perspective. So when I think about that, I'm always thinking of compatibility with screen readers. Will my screen reader be able to read this? And the only way to know for sure is to have it tested ahead of time, because you don't want to put it out and then those with visual impairments or other kind of impairments can't use it. There are some guidelines that you can follow. It's called WCAG 2.1 AA. Follow those and you should be pretty okay. And as far as performers, because I'm a performer myself or a speaker, I'd always like to know how visual their performance or speaking would be, and if there will be any kind of audio description there, those considerations. If they're handouts, am I able to get those ahead of time in a Word document? Because a Word document's the most compatible with screen readers. Other considerations I would look for are spacing, like in the event. Is there seating to those who are deaf or may have some hearing complications? How loud are is the system? Will you have like noise canceling headphones for those who can't overload their sensory perceptions and things of that nature? Like, will there be volunteers to help guide around? Is there any large print in Braille signage so that I can walk around and touch and use? I think those are kind of things that I would immediately put into consideration, because I think those are the most vital things. As far as the performance, you have to, I guess, talk to the performer and just get a feel for what the performance is going to be. And then at that point, I think you can start kind of formatting a plan. And again, asking that the communities, you can come to some of the people in the communities or committee or however you feel it needs to be done and say, these are the considerations we're thinking of putting in place. How do you guys feel about this? Are we missing anything? Or is this too much? So I think that's where I would head to and work off of that, if that helps any.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was fantastic. And then I'm gonna follow up on that question with Maria, and then we have a question in the Q&A panelists that I'll read to you guys here in just a moment. But first, so to touch on those resources and materials that are available, Maria, can you talk to us about what resources are available to ensure that event materials, including those registration forms, online, promotional marketing, session handouts, how they're available in multiple languages?
Yes, thank you for the question, Ashley. So we make a distinction between what it is vital information and what is not. So vital information, just in a nutshell, applications, permits, all those documents, information that if I don't communicate with you might cause you harm. That's a good definition of vital information. That is something that needs to be professionally translated. And then what is important to me is like, okay, it's now translated. Now, how are we going to get people to know that it is translated and that it is available to them? Digital is difficult because sometimes like keeping our websites updated all the time is like an effort that requires people and money. And that's why a lot of times people rely on artificial intelligence to do this. So that's why I mentioned vital information. When we talk about vital information, I am strict about the quality of translations and the way we're going to communicate people that they exist. Other things that we can just share, okay, is fine, it's sustainable to rely on artificial intelligence, but I always like to add a disclaimer that lets people know that this is artificial intelligence, and I apologize in advance if it's not precise. And for further assistance, where you can find further assistance. Do we have an interpreter for you available? Here is the phone number where you can call us and request that information. So basically, to me, it's a little bit like an umbrella approach, where not only it's not about one tool, but the combination of several of them. And in the particular case of the city of Tacoma, we need to create that habit. People from other communities are not used to coming to our website for information because it's not easy to find it in other languages. So we are planning to like facilitate that. Right now, the website is going on like new design, make it visible that the language assistant is there. And also, what I said, that that difference between vital information and information that we just want to share is key to establish. But beyond that, again, letting people know that this is there for you, and also being careful about other tools available. And this is something that I'm constantly learning and learning more between the overlap. There's an overlap in between language access and accessibility. To me, ASL is another language. To me, have all the technology and mechanisms for people who have some difficulties seeing is another type of, like, is in the territory of language of communication. So it's like making sure that we have those originals in Word available if they are requested for additional service. So yeah, it's an umbrella approach for me. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and the toolkit that will be released later will have some resources where you can find translators and translation services. Because I asked myself, well, where do I go for that? I had to go to Maria. And so Maria's been so grateful to share those so that we can share them widely. Well, we have a question in the chat. I'm going to just go ahead and read it. I think I know who I'm going to direct it to, but I think there could also be other input. But the question is, what are your suggestions for bringing the equity lens to events that have been traditionally cis, white, male, or female? Events where not only the guests are not used to outsiders, but the outsiders are hesitant to attend these events. I think I'm going to bring that to Athena real quick, just because of her experience with dealing with those different types of populations.
Yes, I saw that and I was like, I want to answer. So thank you, Ashley. I think that so first and foremost, there's Columbia School of Business put out a really great checklist for events, and I can send you the link. And I started using it a while ago, but when I think about how to ensure DEIA at my events, specifically, I do events for lots of different people, and I've done a lot for cis males. And I think that when my clients asked me this question, I said, there's like, a couple things that you need to be really thinking about, and you need to put it out there way before the event, right? And within the marketing materials, communicating your commitment to DEIA as a person that's putting it on is going to immediately be a like, oh, this is a welcoming space. So if you're talking about it openly, thoughtfully, with your audience before they get to the event, they're going to understand that. Also offering DEI training to staff and volunteers is really, really important. And wanting to, so I'm always thinking about this in a business mind. Like if you are only marketing to cis male, female, your population is really small. And so if you want to sell more product or be more available, you should be thinking about it in a wider scope on all of these spaces that we're talking about, whether or not it's LGBTQ, BIPOC, accessibility to people that are have needs like like being unable to hear or visually impaired. You're losing out on lots of people that you could market it to. So being more having more of those availabilities just it gives you a bigger audience in general. So, and then also, as I was saying before, I'm really particular about how I choose my partners. You know, I want my partners to have the same values that I do. And people that want to be thoughtful and want to be in the DEI space. And, you know, I think it's one of those spaces of like, how do we start, you know, how do we start being this way? And then creating that inclusive environment, what was what we're talking about right now, and letting people know that those things are going to be at your event.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I want to just open the floor up to anybody else who wanted to perhaps touch on that question. Okay. Well, I'm gonna keep moving because I've got like 3 more questions I for sure want to try and sneak in. We've got like 15 minutes, but I really want to talk about access. Like now we're at the event. My first question is for Athena. From a planning perspective, can you provide some tips on access, transportation, safe rooms, sensory considerations? What are you doing at your event to ensure the event feels inclusive for all?
Well, with transportation, you really want to talk about that. You should have a transportation plan about how you're going to get people from point A to point B. And I always think about it in a green space where like you can be biking, you can be using the link, you can do all of these things. And then that also opens the event up to being like more people can come than just driving there, and accessibility. And then sometimes that's a pre-conversation, right? But then you need to think about like, how accessible is my event? Are people walking in off the street? Is there an elevator? Do they need to go around a couple corners? Talking about that before people get there is also going to be, you're making it more accessible by telling people that they're going to have to find an elevator if they can't take the stairs, or if there's no ramp for a wheelchair to go up. Let's see, what else? Safe rooms, you know, I mean, having all of the rooms, all the restrooms be gender accepting. If the event space doesn't have that and you want it to be that way, you can put those signs up. Most event places want to do what you want to happen for your event. Sensory considerations at Tacoma Pride, or most events, I always have a space that people can be quiet and get centered in a tent or something far off, or a building that's accessible for people to just like get quiet. And then let's see what else. Ensure your event is inclusive to all. I mean, there's a lot of pieces, right? We're talking about maybe people that need ASL, maybe people that read Braille. There's a lot of those pieces, maybe people that have a second language or a first language. All of those things take intentionality beforehand. And at the event, they should be implemented as such, right? Like, so I would have ASL interpreters, I would have a sensory space. There's a lot of those things that they take planning to get to those spots at the day of.
Yeah.
Making sure you have room, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Well, then that kind of brings me back to Maria, because what happens when that happens at your event? Like, what steps do you suggest for organizers to accommodate attendees who need language access support at the event itself? So personal interpreters, excuse me, having bilingual staff, like, so what happens when a first person walks up to your volunteer who's only been there for like 15 minutes and says, I need help, I don't understand this language. So what do you do to prepare?
So first of all, I need to make sure that all the materials are ready before the event. meaning the flyers, the sign, as I said, even if people don't read, if they have the big signs in their language, they feel welcome, or it kicks their curiosity. Oh, this is for me. So I'm going to stop and check it out. Second, for me, it's very important that people feel welcome. And one of the ways to do that is having a staff or volunteers who reflect the communities I'm serving. I know very well, I've been told by attendees, I don't come to this event is not for me. And like, so why you feel it's not for you? And it's because sometimes they just enter the room and they don't see anybody that look like them. So, and they assume, and then what happens if I have flyers on the table and you come and you speak Khmer and you see the flyers, but you have questions and there's no one at the table who can help you. You get the flyer, and again, we're dealing with other types of accessibility. We are dealing with levels of literacy. We are dealing with cultural and historic aspects. So, or I have my interpreters there, or I have ambassadors to help me, or I have a tablet that I can immediately connect with an interpreter and offer the tablet for accessibility purposes. I know that a lot of staff help themselves and do the best they can with cell phones, but sometimes when you are talking about other levels of accessibility like ASL or other communication tools like that, it's best to have a tablet. It's best to have something a little bit bigger and a system where you can access an interpreter or get the help in hopefully 2 minutes tops. Of course, I didn't learn this overnight. Everybody starts like with, oh, let's have the flyer printed in different languages and translated, and we are full of good intentions, but we really need to learn about our communities. And also, I insist that we need to build the relationships and take the time it takes. It doesn't happen overnight, especially like in my events, I'm the government, right? So I have to deal with trust. There's mistrust, and there's different reasons why I have to acknowledge them, and I have to work on that, and I have to recognize the reasons why and own it and apologize if necessary and take it from there and actually ask people. Sometimes people are upset, and even like allowing them the space to be upset, to tell you what they need to tell you, and then asking them to help you improve is something that has worked for me before. But that's what you can expect if I am organizing the event. I'm going to have my communications depending on the communities I'm serving. I'm going to make it visible. Visible? Yeah, visible. I also want to have the support ready to back up those printed communications or those. And to me, something that I like to have in the events is the interpreter and the ambassador, and having them working together. The ambassador can help a lot, the interpreter, and can also guide the questions and help the community member. But to me, that image that we present at the very first moment a person walks in is important, is key, because I think that this had happened to me before. I just walk sometimes to an event or something, I look around and I back off and leave.
Right. Yeah.
So if I have to take one out of all what I've said, reflect the communities you serve. That is 40% of the game.
Well, thank you, Maria. I appreciate that. Athena, did you have something on that?
No, just totally agree. I think that if you're doing an event for a community and you haven't been thoughtful about who's supposed to be there, I mean, I feel the same way. If I walked in somewhere and didn't feel like I was going to relate to anybody in there, I'd walk away. Like, it's just human nature. We want to be around people that look and talk and to identify. I really love that you brought up the ambassador. I think that is a key thing. I think I could probably eliminate some committees type stuff with them choosing an ambassador, right? So it's like they've chosen someone as an ambassador as opposed to having 6 people in the kitchen talking about something, it would be better to just have an ambassador, and it will eliminate a lot of confusion, I think. And I really like that you said the ambassador and the interpreter would work together, and just, and then knowing the community, like, are they 40% Spanish? Are they, you know, talking about this group coming together, and like we like look at the section of like community, like we were doing something on the east side, and who lives in that area, who would come to that. Like, I think that's great.
Well, I have another question. We do have another poll question. We could probably end on it, DeMeSHee, if that's okay with you, because I really want to talk about access. And I have something for Tony here, and for particularly in our office, we talk a lot for outdoor events, but I think this question could easily relate to any indoor events as well. And what measures we think event organizers should make for events to be physically accessible. And I would love it if you had any experiences, Tony, that you could share upon that for our audience today.
I think it's going to be different for outside and inside, because the two different setups, two different ways of going about it. And for me, the difficulty outside is there's nothing to really guide me. So if an event's outside, you need something to kind of guide me to where I need to go, or some kind of volunteers or something of that nature. Inside, you may be able to put the signage up, and just having the proper spacing. I remember going to the Tacoma Dome to a concert one time, and back then I could see a little bit, but the seating for people with disabilities was still way too far back. So I still couldn't enjoy the concert because the seating was too far back. I couldn't see anything. So things like that need to be considered as well. If you have a disability section, make sure it's in an appropriate area. Make sure, again, like the aisleways are large enough for ramps, there's elevators. If it's an outside event, make sure that there's some cemented sidewalks for wheelchairs to roll around, and not just a big grass area to where they can't get through. Make sure there is signage, and there are things that are easily navigatable. Making sure it's not too cluttered with flyers, or what do you call those things? Those billboard things that go on the sidewalk. Because I know walking on sidewalks and there's a lot of things in the way is very difficult and disorientating. So those are just a few of the physical aspects that I say you can use. Again, it's going to be different for outside and inside, because there are two different kind of terrains to kind of navigate. And making sure you have an accessible restroom, an ADA accessible restroom, not just I guess not just the porta potties outside. I think those, to me, those are the things that I would consider right off the bat. So thanks for the question.
Yeah, thank you. And for the restrooms on the outdoor ones, not just one ADA restroom and their entire footprint, multiple in key areas, please and thank you. You cannot just be directing people that need ADA bathrooms to one area that's like 4 blocks down. That is just not nice to do. We had Lucas, who is our chair, our liaison for the Tacoma Area Coalition on Disabilities. We've got about 2 minutes left, folks. I see Lucas and Athena. We're going to try to wrap this up quick if you don't mind, but please go ahead and touch on that subject.
My response is coached and supported by Chair Hester and the others on the commission. So it's an embellishment or an enhancement to what has already been shared. We talked a little bit about people who are deaf or hearing impaired. And what's important here are sight lines to ASL interpreters. So if you're too far back, you can't see those interpreters. So it's important for people that may be deaf to be close enough so that they have a clear view of everything that's being communicated. The second thing that I'd like to share is that sometimes people squeeze together some people who are deaf and those who are hearing impaired, and their accommodation may not be the same because people that are hearing impaired may not know ASL. And so in those cases, accommodation includes what was called CART, or closed captioning, at the event. And if it's, let's say it's a conference, the people that you want to select to be there to type up what is being discussed, you need at least two of them, and they can type up the entire dialogue, the entire conversation that's having at that event. People that are hearing impaired will benefit from that, as well as other people that may have some hearing issues. And so that's the kind of pre-planning that you need to do in separating those two different but distinct needs.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lucas. And this is exactly why I had Lucas hanging out in the background with us, because he has so much experience on these topics as well and has been so vital to our process. All right, Athena, what do you have for us?
I guess it's for Tony. I generally always try to put 50 to 60 seats in front of the stage, and I've always been like, I've done it like multiple times. It in front of the stage is better than on the side, correct? I just wanted to clarify that. I'm thinking about my thought process about it, and I guess Lucas just talked about having a straight sight line. So
For me, yes, I
okay,
think you have better hearing when you're centered in front of the stage. Those that need, as Lucas said, a sight line for ASL interpreters, it's easier to see. Those who have hearing impairments can hear better closer. For me, I like to be closer because I can hear everything. So yes, I would say getting the seating as close as you can. It doesn't necessarily have to be front row, but as
right,
close as you can.
right.
Um,
And then
I think it's
signage
beneficial.
dictating all that. Like this is for, you know, um, I mean, I guess is the proper signage and what it should say. I don't really like disability seating, but what is the proper term to say for that? This seating is
I guess you could say reserved for people who need accommodations,
okay, great.
or reasonable accommodations if you don't want to use the term disability, but I think using the term disability is just fine.
Okay,
A
great.
lot of people still consider that an okay term.
Okay,
Or you can simply just put reserved seating.
right.
Yeah, you don't really have to specify who is
Spell it
reserved
out.
for.
Okay, got it. All right.
So, and I think that would probably be the best way. That way you're not identifying a specific community. You're just
Yeah.
saying this is reserved seating.
I'd really try to stay away from stereotypical things, you know. I think that I usually have volunteers looking out for people that are like if there's a someone that shows up in a wheelchair on the sidelines and we've got reserved seating and they don't see the sign or what have you, then I have volunteers going up, you this space is for you, like you can be over here, you know, and guiding them. So I think that's key too, is because sometimes when you have reserved seating, people that even have disabilities, they're like, I don't know, is that for me, you know, kind of thing. So
That's what I was going to say. And then people showing them that the reserved seating is for them, because they often assume it's for like a special guest or something.
yeah,
No, it's
VIP.
for you. So, okay, I'm going to take Maria's last question, and then we're going to toss it back to DeMeSHee to wrap us up. Maria, what do you got for us?
I just have a comment for Tony and for Athena, and is that to me, one of the reasons why I work with community ambassadors is to learn. I recognize that I don't know everything, and I recognize the importance, and I want to tell you both that you listening to what you both have said is making me realize that I'm going to invest in having ambassadors for accessibility and for LGBTQ plus communities, because I cannot mimic the experience. I cannot read the experience. I need someone who really has the experience to orient my approaches. And yeah, so thank you so much. That's all I want to say. I might bug you both afterwards.
Well, good. That's exactly
Anytime.
what this is here for, is to connect us all, help us learn from each other, help us be better. I mean, we are not experts at everything here. We all have great wells of knowledge and information and experiences, but it kind of takes all of us coming together to put all the pieces together of the puzzle. So I just want to say thank you to my panelists here. Thank you so much for being here today. Thanks for taking time out of your life to talk about what we think is just some really important work that we all should be doing when it comes to events in our community. And I was so grateful to be here. I'm going to give it back to DeMeSHee. We might have one more poll question. I know we're over time, but thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you all for being here. Like Ashley has already mentioned, we do appreciate you sharing part of your day with us. We unfortunately don't have time for another poll question, but I have put up the TVE SkillShop page where you can go and find the resources that we all have been talking about today. So please go ahead and visit that website, TVE SkillShop website. We also have upcoming skill shops that we will announce later on in the next few weeks. And we just appreciate you all being here. And don't be afraid to reach out to us if you do need some assistance in finding some resources that perhaps you don't notice in the document. Thank you so much. Take care.